So as a coach and an IFP, I'm often asked about discipline and what I had to do to overcome my own struggles with procrastination and really just a strong aversion to having any sort of daily structure or routine. And there are a lot of nuances to this, but I would say that a big part of my own journey and really a catalyst for growth, my journey was COVID. Specifically, I actually got a lot out of hotel quarantine, for the few weeks that I was there. And really before going into those weeks, I had heard a lot of stories on the news about mentally fit bankers like getting depressed. It was like the lack of air or just being locked up in a room for 2 weeks that seemingly broke them down. So I was kind of like adamant that I didn't want to have the same experience, and instead I would prepare myself mentally and emotionally to use my time more wisely and productively. So those weeks in hotel quarantine became my hyperbolic time chamber, if you're familiar with Dragon Ball Z. But as an INFP, it's just in my nature that I've always had an aversion to routine, because I think I had this belief around it stunting my spontaneity or just making life really boring, which is funny because I find the opposite to be true now. And I think having these moments in life where you're kind of forced into survival or certain limitations really help you see the importance of how routine can really improve your overall well-being. So for those 2 weeks, I had to really manage my dopamine reserves. And I could really see the contrast between the days that I do show up to my productive routine and the days that I didn't. Having that contrast, I could see that I was far more likely to be down on the days that I didn't show up. And I really think that it's the same for our daily lives, with the balance of conscious rest days, of course. Also, I remember reading the quarantine message boards, and I could see how other people were draining their dopamine reserves by watching entertainment all day. So by the third day, they had already saturated their dopamine, and it got really boring. So then it followed, there were a lot of arguments, complaining, people were getting sick of each other, they were feeling claustrophobic, and they were just feeling really down. And I was fortunate in the sense that I had read Atomic Habits by James Clear, as well as watched a couple of Andrew Huberman podcasts. So I had gone in with some understanding of how to ration out my dopamine. So my days in lockdown were focused on being productive and really trying to stay mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically balanced. Oh, and dancing. I can confirm that dancing does indeed help with sanity, especially when you're in lockdown. So I know for the most of us, COVID is kind of like normalized now, but I'd really love to hear some of your own personal experiences from the lockdowns. Like, what did you learn? I know for different people, some experience a shift like myself, whether it was spending more time connecting with friends and family on Zoom calls, ramping up their overall productivity and getting focused, starting a side hustle, or really working on their self-care and experimenting with different forms of slowing down, meditation, or home workouts. Although it sucked, there was a part of me that felt like the lack of freedom was a good reminder of just like how good we had it, It brought like a level of gratitude towards the freedom that I had completely taken for granted in the past. And I think it's still so easy to forget, now that life has more or less become back to normal. In Melbourne, we were the longest lockdown city in the world at some point, I think. And through that, like suddenly going out for, 30 minutes or an hour of exercise within a 5-kilometer radius was just really appreciated and amazing. Like me and my dad would literally ride back and forth within 5 kilometers, sometimes a cheeky 10. But we loved it, and also like when I was in quarantine, not having fresh air or windows, like when you came out, you're just so grateful for fresh air. That's the government. Got all my bags packed and it's time to go. And I've never looked forward to fresh air and walking more than 5 meters in my life. See you later. Oh, fresh air. Gimme. Oh, feels so good. It feels so good. Oh, and also just the lack of, like where we live in Docklands, everyone's just so friendly here, and being able to go out and see people's faces and and socialize. Like I remember during COVID, there was a time where everyone was wearing masks and everyone was just kind of like, like there was a lot of anxiety and just the energy was low. And it kind of really felt like you got a sense of what living in a apocalyptic world felt like. But anyway, just a quick share today, guys, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.